Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are
hangingontohope.org. This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. All right. Well, welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Karen W. On today's show, we're thrilled to have Gini Larsen. Gini received her counseling certification from the Association of Certified Biblical Counselors, and she has been counseling women for more than 18 years. In addition to her biblical counseling certification, her educational background also includes a master's degree in public administration from ASU. And Brenda and I met through Gini and the Mending the Soul Group that she organized. So we're so happy to have you on the show, Gini.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you.
Hi, Gini.
Hey, Brenda. How are you doing?
I was too excited. I had to get that out real quick. Okay.
So I just love you guys. The audience needs to know that right up front.
And we love you too.
We love you too.
So today we're going to talk about attachment theory. So I've been fascinated with it since I first started learning about it. I read a marriage book long time ago. I read a lot of marriage books back in my marriage. But I thought it was so interesting because it really does play into how you interact with each other. So as I was reading about in the early years of our marriage, I started, just wanting to know more and more about it, because once you understand what attachment style you are, which I guess can kind of change, but it helps you understand why you do what you do and, the interactions you have in relationships. So if we want to just start out and tell us, what is attachment theory?
Well, yes, attachment theory has been around since the 1950s. It's really pretty well established and settled science in the social work fields and counseling fields and psychology. It was something that came to the forefront with a lot of work that was done by a man named John Bowlby. And he pioneered this concept that the way that we are socialized and the way our needs are met when we're infants helps to predict and provide pathways for adult relationships later in life. And so he joined together with a woman named Mary Ainsworth, who is also kind of a pioneer in this whole area. And they looked specifically at the relationship between the mother and father and the infant to establish really 4 attachment styles that we can talk about later on that most people adopt based on the way they're cared for when they're little.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I know a little about this. So hi, Gini. Welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Brenda.
Can you explain how attachments form in early childhood?
Absolutely. First of all, I got into attachment theory because I worked a lot in adoption. And we spent a great deal of time at the agency I work for helping to equip parents with an understanding of how to care for a baby that doesn't come through your family biologically, and the importance of forming an attachment or a bond with that infant so that when the infant grows up, it can have healthy, normal adult relationships and give a buffer to stress and other traumatic experiences that we all might experience during life's journey. So it was really important to help parents understand newborns and the basic fundamental understanding of a newborn's development is that the child has a need and the mother meets the need. And as time goes on, that circle of trust develops. And, we're all born with 500 million disconnected neurosynapses in your brain. And the idea is that as those connect, it forms pathways or neurobiological channels for people to establish very primary emotions like trust and empathy and the ability to care for others and altruism and service. And all of those things can become strengthened in an individual's personality when they have been given those things by their parent when they're a baby. So a baby receives a bond or develops a bond with their mother or caregiver based on a number of things. Their eye contact with the baby, like I said, meeting that need, that circle of trust that develops when you're meeting a child's needs and a baby's needs. And slowly, a child develops more than just a good outcome from getting fed. They also develop a preference for an adult. And then later, they develop a relationship with that adult. So it goes from something very basic, like somebody needs to feed me, to I know who you are, you're feeding me, to I want you, you're the one I want to have feed me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then if the needs aren't getting met, then that's going to affect the infant, of course, later on in life as well.
Yes. What Bowlby and Ains discovered is that babies very quickly understand when their needs are being met. And you guys, kind of what happens is a biological thing. It's when a child's needs are met, they're calm, right?
Yeah.
They're calm, they're happy, they're generally speaking being cuddled or touched. And so they just emit all of the good soothing brain chemicals that you get when you're at rest or at peace. But if you're stressed out because your needs aren't being met, then you're emitting other chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline, and that kind of puts a baby at a high alert state. And then the attachment style that you develop with the parent can become an anxious relationship. So the attachments that people form with their parents are often based on how quickly and how the needs are met and how attuned a parent is to a baby's needs. So you can imagine that if a child gets its needs met for food or comfort or warmth from a parent, then they become very peaceful and they're very stress-free and they're more at ease with their environment and with the people around them. But if an infant doesn't get those needs met right away and a circle of trust doesn't develop, then the chemicals that the brain emits are things like cortisol and adrenaline. And those are things that put all of us into a state of anxiety or high alert. Stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline can be present in a baby, and then the baby's attachment style becomes more anxious because the child is anxious. So they have a more anxious or worrisome attachment style that develops from that. And if they quickly realize that no one is going to help them and no one's going to comfort them or soothe them or feed them, then they can start to learn to self-soothe or shut down a little bit emotionally, and that can develop into another kind of insecure attachment style that we call an avoidant attachment style. And so what you're aiming for in all of this is the secure attachment style, which is, as I stated, the one that shows the mom or the dad has been feeding the baby and caring for the baby and making eye contact and loving that child in very demonstrable ways.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So if you want to just get into what the different 4 attachment styles are, because like you said, there's anxious, avoidant, and then different people, have different names for them. But the ones I were looking at was anxious, avoidant, disorganized, which is more of like anxious, avoidant, and then secure, which is what we all would like to be secure. But unfortunately, we're not all secure attachments. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Karen. You're so right. I mean, the secure attachment style is something that they believe about 50 to 60% of the population actually has. Now, most of us don't have perfect parents. So I'm not saying that you have to be a perfect parent to give your child that secure attachment style, but it's generally speaking, if your attachment style is secure, it's because mom or dad met those basic needs from an early age and there wasn't a lot of stress and arguing and tension in the home. You see, so the secure attachment is one where it's relatively easy to get close to people. You are comfortable depending on other people and having other people depend on you. And it's where you don't worry about being abandoned. You don't worry about somebody being close to you because you're secure. You've had a secure connection to your mom or dad or caregiver as a child.
Yeah. You have a healthy view of your own like self-confidence or self-worth when you're secure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So attachment styles usually are defined 4 different ways. The secure attachment, obviously, being the one that we just discussed. And then the ambivalent style is the more worrisome or anxious style. And people who express that style really do struggle with feeling abandoned, rejected. They're very worrisome over their relationships. And they have a hard time understanding why other people might sometimes kind of back away from them because they might come on a little bit too strong. They worry a lot about being rejected by other people. And so their goal or desire to have an intimate relationship with someone can really backfire sometimes because they can kind of come on too strong because they're getting very stressed. They can get a little bit desperate to try to seek out attention or closeness and intimacy from other people. And you see, it is a good thing to be close and to be connected, but when it becomes an ultimate thing and something that just drives you, it can become frightening both to the partner or difficult for other people to understand and hard on the person that's experiencing those feelings. And that's not an uncommon style, actually. It's a little bit more common than the avoidant style.
So what are the characteristics of avoidant attachment style? I think they say a lot of most men are avoidant attachment.
People who are avoidant types, which is the third style that has to do with not feeling comfortable sharing feelings, with being distant, slightly aloof, someone who has a hard time understanding how other people feel, and that when they get stressed, they just kind of want to deal with things themselves. They don't want to go to other people for help. They want to help themselves. And, you're right. For a lot of guys, that's hard because they haven't really been, they're not familiar with difficult emotions. They have a harder time with those feelings, the ones that women do better with processing and regulating. And so they can stay a little bit distant, but an avoidant person is someone who feels uncomfortable getting close to other people. They find it difficult to trust them completely and difficult to allow them to depend on other people themselves. And they don't necessarily feel good when other people want to be intimate with them. They'll just kind of back away from that. People who are avoidant types, they complain a lot when other people want to talk about how they feel. They'll say, I don't want to go there. Why do we have to go there? They're just uncomfortable with feelings. They don't really know how to process those or how to manage them sometimes. And they really value like independence and self-sufficiency, and they don't want to include others in what their real basic needs are. And so they may value things like work or achievement, personal accomplishment over close, intimate relationships. So you can see how hard that would be for someone that's either married to or in a relationship with someone of the opposite style. That can really cause a lot of problems for you and your partner when one of you is ambivalent and the other one's avoidant. You can see how that might really hurt a relationship.
Yeah, cause some problems.
And sometimes they try to actually distance themselves a little bit, thinking basically that they're preserving the relationship by being a little bit distant, that because they can't handle emotions well, they don't do well regulating emotions, especially hard emotions, they'll sometimes stay a little bit distant. Someone who feels uncomfortable getting close to other people, they find it difficult to trust them completely.
Yeah, cause some problems.
What causes a disorganized attachment style?
Well, a disorganized attachment style is usually the last one that we mention of the four. And it is one where you have probably had some pretty significant trauma or injuries going on in your life. You've had a lot of soul wounds, in other words, because disorganized people don't have a consistent pattern for how they respond to others. Feelings to them are very confusing. They don't know really what to do with them. They can feel very intense. They can feel very overwhelming to people. Sometimes they're needy and clingy, and sometimes they're distant and aloof. They get really torn between wanting to be close to people and wanting to pull away from people. And they can have a difficult time letting people get close to them, as I mentioned with the other style. But once they do get close to someone, they worry excessively about being abandoned or somehow rejected by them. They just have a lot of struggles with vulnerability because they've been hurt so badly in their early years. A lot of pain, a lot of brokenness in their past or in their background. And they just have a hard time knowing how to let other people get close to them. And then when they finally get close to them, then they don't want to be close to them anymore. They kind of have that back and forth seesaw thing that can happen. They just can't seem to sometimes decide how to handle or whether or not they want to have a close relationship with someone. And you could see how that would be the case if someone's been in either a traumatic childhood experience or a traumatic abusive adult relationship. So those are the four basic styles that most people would identify.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Would a disorganized be like most likely if they had one parent that was real nurturing and the other one was distant? Because that would be kind of confusing because there was no real consistency.
It could. I think sometimes those kinds of things are best determined by going through an entire interview process with the therapist, maybe something like the adult attachment interview protocol that helps to really dig into what kinds of feelings you had associated with each parent. If there's a parent who has done a pretty good job, like I want to stress to you today, usually that creates a child that's pretty resilient and can have a more secure attachment style. Those disorganized styles really do tend to be from people that haven't ever had a trust-based relationship with an adult. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And I look back at of course, it makes you think about your own. And I know my parents lost a baby boy, I think he died November of 1964. I was born November 1965. So they really didn't have a lot of time to grieve. And it was a boy. So I think that had to be hard. And I think my mom was definitely more nurturing, but I think my dad was definitely more distant. So I think I have different styles because of that. But I don't know. I just find it all really interesting how that all plays into things that you do now, how you react towards relationships now. It really plays into it. And to me, it helps me because I was like, why do I do this? Or why do I do that? But when you go back and understand it, it does help you see, that why you're reacting in certain ways. To me, it just helps me. I'm just a big why person. I need to know, why do I do this? Why am I doing this? And so it really helps you understand and bring more light to it.
Well, as I'm figuring this out, just listening to everything you say, I did realize I struggled with some issues. My mom, when I was about not even one, she had she was in the hospital for like a month and a half. And I was the youngest of 5 kids. So I was a baby. And I guess my mom said I just got put in different caretakers, for that entire time. But I definitely felt this fear of abandonment my entire life. I was angry at my mom in my 20s and I couldn't figure out why. And then when I realized that had happened, I'm totally fine now and I've gotten past that. But I'm still a mess, so I'm ready to listen to some more of this podcast.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So what causes insecure attachment?
Well, Brenda, you brought up a really good point just then. And I will tell you, too, that I had a client one time a number of years ago who was struggling with her daughter, who was about 20 years old. And they came in for some counseling and everything seemed pretty good. I mean, they had some ups and downs that they were going through. In fact, they had lost the husband and the father a few years back, but they seemed to be doing pretty well with it. And then at some point in this story, the mother made a comment about having cancer. And I said, you didn't mention to me that you'd had cancer. And she goes, oh, yeah, I had thyroid cancer right after my daughter was born. I had to go and be irradiated to cure the cancer. And so she had to go live with my mother for the first year of life. Oh, now the light bulb comes on, right? Now you're having some struggles because there was not a real strong bond that was formed. And the other thing, like what you were talking about, Karen, with your mother losing a child, is that if you're afraid because you have cancer, or if you have just lost a baby, you're not emotionally available.
Yeah.
As you normally would be. You see, so in both of those cases that you just described, this is a mom that could not give you that emotional connection that you were probably looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom said I was very independent from at 1 and 2 years old. I'd go walk 4 houses down to my cousins, very, very independent. So I don't know where that came from either, but my mom was not feeling well for a while. She had undiagnosed diabetes for the 30 years after she was in the hospital. I definitely remember feeling connected to her as a baby, but maybe I did have that fear of abandonment because of not having her all that time she was in the hospital. So,
yeah.
Well, you guys both give me really good reasons to understand why a mother wouldn't be emotionally available. There are other reasons that are not such good reasons. You can imagine when a parent has a substance abuse issue, or when a parent has a mental breakdown, or just sad, hard things like that take a parent out of the child's circle of trust. And those are very difficult things. So I want to stress to you that most of us are not perfect parents, but as long as you're available to your child, most of the time it works out pretty well.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I thought it was interesting. It showed that there's 10 signs of secure attachment in adult relationships. I thought I would just read those, and then I have a question on that. So the 10 signs of secure attachment are: 1, able to regulate emotions and feelings in a relationship; 2, strong goal-oriented behavior when on your own; 3, great at bonding, opening up to, and trusting others; 4, knowing what you're about in life and what purpose you want to fulfill; 5, can communicate your needs effectively; 6, feeling like you have an impact on the world around you; 7, comfortable with closeness and mutual dependency. 8, actively seek emotional support from your partner and also give emotional support. 9, comfortable being alone. And 10, strong capacity to reflect on how you are being in a relationship. So knowing all of that, can you develop secure attachment as an adult? If you are more an insecure attachment style, are you able to develop into a secure attachment?
Absolutely. That's what makes the work that we do in counseling so hopeful for people, because we do know the brain has plasticity and that we can correct some of these destructive things that have happened to people in the past. Karen, I always like to say there's nothing in the world that's better for you than a good relationship. And there's nothing in this world that's worse for you than a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's very true.
Yeah. Yes.
So true.
So a good relationship can really help heal a lot of the soul wounds that come from attachment injuries or traumatic relationships that you experience even as an adult, and can help to give you some of those bonds to reconnect you with your own feelings and with others, help you to develop more empathy and trust. And that's just something we actively work toward in therapy, is to help people to sense what their inner feelings are, to be able to connect with them, and then to be able to reach out into the world around them to connect with the feelings of others with that empathy, that empathetic reaction that I mentioned earlier. It's just so important because as a child, when you have attachment injuries and soul wounds from caregivers, you often, as an adult, will fall into unhealthy relationships, as I mentioned earlier, that can be really difficult for you.
Yeah.
So knowing your attachment style and knowing what your needs are emotionally can really help you in terms of partner selection and, relationship development, so that you don't end up with someone who could even make it worse for you because your attachment style was challenged or weak to begin with.
Yeah. And that's what Mending the Soul was so helpful for me. Going through that the first time when I was separated, it helped me understand, because I was so like, why did I attract this? And going back and helping understand some of this, it helped go, well, that's why, because you attract what you're familiar with for one thing, but a lot of it is these attachment styles too. So to me, that was a big part of healing for me, was understanding that.
Yes, because a secure attachment style actually provides a protective barrier, a factor that helps to buffer you against emotional problems. When you develop a secure style, it doesn't mean you won't have less problems. It just means that you have more protection and more of a secure safety net when those problems do arise, and it helps to buffer you. It's really very good for you.
Yeah. And it's good that there is workshops, even that the website I was looking at, they offer workshops. And I've seen that there's a lot of places that specialize in how you can, develop into a more secure attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel pretty good about these 10 because I'm 4 or 5 of them doing fairly well and working on.
Yeah. That's
but
good.
The other 5, I haven't even begun to even want to be in a relationship to know if I have issues with these things or not. So I'm just so happy being free. And I don't know if that's bad or not. I just was controlled for so long. So I'm just glad that I haven't tried to be in a relationship, because it sounds like if you get in the wrong one again and not understand your attachment style, that's not a good thing either. So.
Correct. What that does if you're in a bad one, Brenda, is there's a lot of toxic stress in those kind of relationships. And just like with the baby who doesn't get its needs met, when you're not getting your emotional needs met from your partner, you get a lot of cortisol and adrenaline and a lot of stress. And what that does is it inhibits you from having the good chemicals and the emotional regulation that you're actually looking for. And it can actually even suppress your immune system. And give you health issues. As we know, there's a mind-body connection, right? When you're under toxic stress from a bad connection with an attachment style that doesn't work for you, it can actually weaken your health.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, I have the Hashimoto's disease from being in that toxic marriage. Since I got out, I've gotten way healthier. I think you've seen that, Ginny.
Yeah, definitely.
Way healthier, but I've still got a ways to go, for sure.
You have a lot more energy, Brenda. You're just a lot sharper. You have more energy. You just look great. I'm just so happy for you.
Thank you. The 3 clues to look for secure attachment in adults is a positive view of self, a positive view of others, and a positive view of childhood. Being able to reflect and make sense of your past, even if it was not perfect. Appreciating the good and understanding the bad and being able to move on from it. It seems a lot of people have not ever processed this. These are easier said than done. Do you have any practical ways to help with those of us that struggle with these?
To develop a more secure attachment style, I think one of the things that really helps is to develop a community of support. Don't hitch your wagon to just one person, one relationship. That puts a lot of pressure on a relationship. No one can meet all of those needs. You need a base support of friends.
That's really good. That's really good. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm a Christian therapist, so I'm very much believe that God gave us the wiring for attachment because he wants to have a connection with us.
Yes, absolutely.
We're able to connect with him. We're able to connect with others, but you could see how having an insecure attachment style might inhibit your ability to even connect with the Lord. So being patient with yourself and understanding yourself, being able to talk to yourself about some of the struggles that you're having in your attachments to both God and others, to any kind of spiritual or emotional connection that you're having, is a really good thing to do. Just knowing yourself and giving yourself a lot of grace and a lot of time to heal, and being willing to accept relationships that aren't perfect, but are life-giving, that speak life into you, is so, so important. You know, Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. He saves the crushed in spirit. It's not only reading that, but believing that God is near, and that even if you're the kind of attachment style that feels a little aloof or distant, that you can, through prayer and meditation and speaking with other Christians and friends, you can re-engage and reconnect those feelings so that you'll draw closer to the Lord and to others.
Yeah. And I think learning about this, to me, it helps me because the brain is so complex, but I feel like God, a lot of these attachment styles, it's kind of a way of surviving early on. Like if your needs aren't getting met, you have to find a way to survive because as a baby, you can't control that. But I don't know, to me, that makes me more drawn to God because God, made it so you're just trying to survive. But then now if you can look back and understand that, there's always hope. Like you're saying, there's always ways. If you don't have a secure attachment style, you can look back and understand why that you kind of had to survive. So you did what you had to do, but now you can strive towards, trying to learn more to have a secure attachment style.
Yeah. And I just love this, what I just read, as I read it again, and I was thinking about it and processing it. I love the part where it says, have a positive view of self and a positive view of others. And we all do that. We all strive to do that when we're healing. But I don't think in any of our podcasts, we talked about having a positive view of your childhood, being able to reflect and make sense of your past, even if it was not perfect. And I think my kids are really going to have to work on that, having a positive view of your childhood. I've never heard that before. So I really like that. And just appreciating the good and understanding the bad and being able to move on from it.
Yeah.
So I'm reading it again so our listeners can hear it again.
Yeah, and it's something they'll have to work through and process because I know that's something my oldest son's going through too.
This is great stuff.
Yeah. So I've tested a couple times, and I think the first time I tested as disorganized. And then the second time, I think I did it through this when I was on this website. They had a quiz and I tested as anxious on this one. So it's kind of interesting because I can kind of relate to both. I mean, my mom was a very anxious person. Me and my sister always joke that like anxiousness is just one of our strongholds because my mom and my grandmother were just very anxious people, always worrying. And so I feel like that's just in our genes, So this is developed when a child perceives that his or her needs are not met, usually through inconsistent parenting. So even if one parent, maybe you can have one parent that was nurturing while the other one was distant or aloof, that can also, play into it. And the child may end up confused about his or her relationship with the caregivers whose behavior seems mixed, if there's those mixed signals. And a strong fear of abandonment might often cause anxious adults to be jealous or insecure of their partners or close relationships. And I think I haven't fully pursued romantic relationships because I'm still working on this. I feel like and that's what helps me. That's what made me kind of go back and look at this too, because I want intimacy and closeness and I really desire a relationship, but I definitely see there's times I'm avoidant where I'm like, I want it, but like, go away. I'm not going to, and then I'm like, why am I doing that? So I think we can all relate to that, but there are also many that jump from one relationship to another and never really want to be alone. So I think it's just so important to understand and just to take a little time to, there's so many quizzes out there. You can take quizzes and you may be like me and test differently because you could be a combination of, relate to a little bit of each one.
So the people that jump to relationship and don't want to be alone, what is their attachment style?
Well, it's probably some kind of insecure attachment style, I would think.
Yes. Yeah, it's the ambivalent style. Normally, people who have an ambivalent or worrisome, anxious style for attachments are people that have a lot of trouble being alone. They are more likely to seek closeness, even in ways that make other people feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. And they often worry that people don't love them. And so they just cling to people to try to get that comfort and that nurturance that they're looking for. They just want people to stay with them. And sometimes they want to get close so quickly that it scares people. And they don't realize that they're being anxious and worrisome. And that, again, it's important for you to talk to yourself about what you're feeling and to tell yourself it's okay. Most of the time when that kind of thing is going on, it's because something from the past is speaking into your present. It's the idea that probably 90% of what you're feeling is from some echo from the past. It's not something that's going on right now in the present. The person's making you feel anxious, but actually what's happened is something from your past made you very anxious. It's bubbling up inside of you because you're interacting with someone and you're trying to be vulnerable. The ratio of how the past affects the present can sometimes be very large, even as high as 90% in people who have, if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, you know that kind of thing is about 90% of the reaction you're having is from your traumatic event. So let's whittle that down to a regular relationship where you're trying to get close to someone and you realize that a lot of your past still does speak into what's going on in the present day.
Yeah.
So those worrisome, anxious feelings and emotions were real, but they're not necessarily the appropriate response today, but they're your past speaking into the present.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I loved the show This Is Us, because I feel like This Is Us, I mean, they didn't talk about attachment style on there, but
I just liked Kevin. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, Kevin was a big part of it. But so much of that show is about, they would go back to the past and then they would fast forward and show them now. And the whole concept was like, yeah, your past affects your future. And so they would show a scene from the past and it's like, oh, well, that's why they do what they do. That's what I loved about the show for me, is like, it just showed that, because I think that's for all of us, it does affect us how we were raised and the things that we had, growing up affects your future. So
I got you watching This Is Us.
Did you?
Yeah. I watched it first.
Oh, I thought I already, yeah, but it was a great show. I was sad when it ended, because I mean, I'll probably go back and watch that again because I just think it's such a great show that way. But is counseling a good way to explore this then? If someone maybe realizes that they're not secure and they want to work on having more secure attachment, then counseling may be one way that would help them with that?
Yes, Karen, absolutely. What therapists are trusted companions. They're people that we are able to go to and speak with and feel safe, like a safe haven. The office that you're in should be a place of safety that allows you to speak freely and that you feel like you're not alone. Sometimes people have been so affected by their past relationships and experiences that they really don't know how to overcome those feelings psychologically. And so being with a therapist and being able to talk and share can really make them feel like they're not alone. We know that being alone is a profoundly damaging experience for most people. People just do better when they're with other people in healthy, productive, and life-giving ways. And so you can just think about a baby that so doesn't want to be alone, and then an adult that struggles with loneliness or feelings of abandonment. I mean, they're very interconnected. We find a lot of these adult experiences are things that mimic or are similar to the things an infant and a mother go through when they're young. So a therapist can provide that complete nurturance and that acceptance and understanding, and build a circle of trust with someone that has maybe not had that in the past.
Yeah, that's great. So there's always hope.
Yeah. Have you noticed any correlation between like trauma and abuse victims and a certain attachment style? Or not necessarily, just depends on your upbringing?
Well, again, these are hard things because this is not I mean, I almost hesitate sometimes when talking about 4 attachment styles because people will reductionistically assume that those are the only 4 possible outcomes to all of this. And it's really very nuanced. I mean, people come through these things and it really does depend on a lot of other factors too about whether or not someone gets into a toxic relationship. It can depend on whether they're poor, the neighborhood they grew up in, the kind of support they have from friends, whether they have a strong religious faith. Lots of things can affect one way or the other, whether or not someone ends up in an unhealthy relationship. And so, but it definitely can push you in the wrong direction if you have an avoidant or ambivalent. And I would say probably more like ambivalent attachment style would be the one that could make you more vulnerable to a toxic or abusive partner.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like the longer I was in that toxic relationship, it changed me. It changed my entire personality to the point where I wasn't a person and I'm still learning who I am again. Like I lost who I was. So it's going to take me listening to this podcast a bunch of times before I even figure out where I land in all of this, because towards the end, I had to stay quiet. I didn't want to, just said nothing. Like I just became someone I wasn't. So this is going to be quite interesting. Yeah.
And I think your attachment style can change, because I think before I was married, I was probably more anxious, but I think after my marriage, I'm more avoidant because I'm like, well, I'd rather be single the rest of my life than have what I had.
Right.
So now I'm more avoidant. So I think it probably changes based on, the relationships you have.
I'm 100% avoidant.
Not good. You guys.
Well,
sounds like we need to talk. I think you guys need to come in. I think you're ready.
Do you have an hour to do a session with us, Jenny?
Yeah, let's talk. You guys are so funny. Well, you see how that works, though. I mean, you were just kind of shut down a little bit there. You withdraw, and those feelings are overwhelming sometimes because you've been through a lot,
Say anything right or wrong to get him to stop hitting me. So the whole marriage was like that, where I would just shut down. But then even at the end, when I was getting advice from, special investigators and all that stuff, and they're like, don't react. If you react, crazy people turn around and turn it against you. So I had to learn not to react, to the point where I was so robotic and unemotional. And it took such a long time to get any of that back, because I was like, I have to be so calm, or I don't want to overreact here or react at all. Like there was no right reaction for me.
You had to survive. So you had to do what you could do.
It was survival mode.
Yeah.
So now I can laugh about it because it's over. And like someone said, if you don't laugh, you're going to cry.
Andy Mineo song.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry. So yeah.
Well, Brenda, and that's a reaction that people sometimes get confused by. It's that emotional numbing, right? It's when the person that's supposed to be your source of safety and comfort, the one that's supposed to be caring for you, becomes the source of your pain.
Yeah.
And that attachment injury is very strong. Those are very powerful feelings. And so most people will either react by becoming hyper anxious and all of the different symptoms that go with that. Or in your case, what you just described is that hypo-anxious state where you shut down.
Yeah.
It's just too much. And this is an attachment figure. This is someone who's supposed to be caring for you, supposed to be a safe haven for you, and they're not.
Yeah, it's supposed to be protecting you, and the other one's hurting you.
Yes.
So after listening to this, what am I? I don't even know.
Yeah. I know.
I'm avoidant with men, but not with women.
Well, see, now that's a good point, Brenda, because you can express a different attachment style based on who you're interacting with. If you're interacting with a parent or thinking about a parent, your answers might be quite different than if you're in a healthy, secure, love-based relationship with an adult today. So those can be different scores. And some instruments will actually measure whether or not you generally speaking, have a secure attachment style, but are insecure with certain types of people.
Yeah.
And that's good information. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Certain types of people I feel not secure with, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then if you're under a great deal of stress or you're under duress, then sometimes you can express an insecure style, whereas the rest of the time you feel very secure about your world. But when stress comes into the scene, you could see how that would push you back into the kind of stress that you felt when the insecure attachment style was developed in the first place.
That's exactly.
So it can show up in a way that doesn't show up the rest of your life, but stress can reveal an insecure method of handling things.
Yeah, I definitely, stress does it for me for sure. I think for Karen too. Stress just kind of does that. Yep.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. It's something I'll continue to read about just because I think it's so fascinating.
Wow. Okay. I knew I had covered a little bit of it when I felt that way towards my mom. I was like, why am I so mad at my mom? She didn't do anything to me. Like, she's a great mother. And then I went back pretty far and realized that she had a gallbladder attack, but when they went to remove her gallbladder, they damaged her pancreas. And she was in the hospital for like a month and a half when I was a baby. So,
well, that's a really good point too, Brenda, because a lot of people feel like if you struggled in a relationship with your mother, you may lack really self-awareness. You don't really know as much and have a difficulty understanding yourself a little bit because your mother didn't understand you. And often, like John Bowlby, who's the father of all of this attachment theory, his most famous quote that everyone remembers and goes to is, "What can't be communicated to the mother can't be communicated to the self." So if you couldn't communicate with your mom, if she rejected you or she dismissed you or didn't understand you in some way, you really do have a lot of trouble understanding yourself.
That's interesting.
That's true. That's true. Wow, that's good.
I did want to mention the part about the spiritual aspect of it, because when people struggle with their relationship with God, a lot of the times it's because they had an insecure attachment style growing up. And it can affect how they connect with God. And there's so much in the Bible that speaks to connection, attachment, abide in me, I will abide in you. That's connection, that's attachment. And that's really ultimately why God gave us the biology to be able to connect in the first place, is because he loved us that much that he wants to be close to us and for us to feel secure with him. So I feel like that's a really important aspect of all of this.
Yeah,
Definitely.
It really is.
Yeah, that was a huge part in my recovery. The spiritual aspect of healing is so big that until my soul started to heal and I became closer to God. But when I was angry at God for those first couple of years and really very distant from God, I wasn't really able to heal fully. So I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, you guys are doing great. I'm so glad you found the churches that you like and that you're moving forward with all that. And it feels so different when you're out from under a toxic relationship. You can finally have a relationship with God and you're kind of free, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, definitely.
There's not much better feeling than that.
Yeah.
Being out of a toxic relationship. Until you're out of it, you don't know how great it feels. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm so proud of you guys. You guys are the best.
Well, we just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Gini. Did you want to share your website if anyone's interested in seeing you?
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, it's biblicalhope.org. And we're located here in the Gilbert area. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions and speak with you if you have a need that's based on something we talked about today. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a blessing to be with you guys and see how far you've come and to see the hard work you've done. That is an investment in healing your future. So you guys are really my heroes in this whole thing.
Oh, thank you. Well, we love all the work that you've done to help us. So
wow.
Very thankful for your work, and I'm thankful for
forever grateful to you.
Yes.
Wow. We love you guys.
Thank you for doing what you do.
You betcha. And you likewise. And I steer people to your podcast. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, you are on our website already. So
all right. Great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Gini.
Thank you. God bless you. Take care.
Bye.
All right.
All right. Well, I think we should have it all covered now, right?
I don't know. I just kind of went on too long.
And I think I haven't fully pursued remote. I can't talk. Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.